Welcome back to MotionPic Recap. Today we're going to recap the science fiction, cyberpunk and action thriller movie titled, Alita, Battle Angel. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. 300 years after a terrible war, a man called Dr. Dyson Ido, who is a cyborg-surgeon, finds a female cyborg with an intact human brain at a massive scrapyard. Ido brings her home and attaches new cyborg body parts to her. Some time later, she wakes up, and seems a bit confused about the world around her, and her own body. She finds her way down in the house, and find Ido and his assistant Jurhad helping a man. As they sit down and talk, Ido explains he miraculously found her head and brain intact, but couldn't find her original body. She remarks she can't remember anything, not even her name, and sheds a tear. Ido gets her in a better mood, and shows her the city, called Iron City. She asks if he has a name for her until she can remember her own, and Ido remarks Alita is a nice name, which she loves. She asks about the floating city, and Ido explains it's called Salem, one of the last great sky cities from after the war, and that everybody down here works for Salem. She stops seeing a sport that she thinks is cool, and Ido tells her motorball is a waste of time. While Ido stops to buy something, Alita sees a dog she shares some food with. She spots a note on the ground explaining a murderer is wanted. Suddenly, a machine called a Centurion appears, and a guy named Hugo throws her to the side to save her. She immediately jumps back under the Centurion to save the dog from being crushed, and Hugo remarks that was outstanding. When he helps her up, feeling her weight, he remarks she must be a cyborg, and when seeing her arm, he says it's really nice work, asking if Ido did it. She tells him Ido built all of her, except her core. Ido appears, and Hugo tells him he's got those parts he wants, and they agree to meet later, and bid each other goodbye. That night, somewhere in the city, a murder occurs. Later, Alita sees how Ido comes home full of blood. Next day, they're helping a man who got attacked the day before, and got his parts stolen, and Ido makes Alita promise not to be out after dark. As Alita goes out later, a woman stops her, looking at her cyborg body. Later, the woman called Dr. Chirin tells Ido she's surprised to see Alita in their daughter's body, asking if he told Alita who he really built that body for, and Ido remarks their daughter is dead. Somewhere else, Alita sees Hugo and his friends playing a simpler form of motorball, and Hugo asks if she wants to try, which she really wants to. Chirin asks Ido to help her build a champion they can win with, so they can go back up, but Ido remarks he won't help her, and she leaves. Meanwhile, Alita is trying to play motorball, but struggles. A boy knocks her down, making her angry, and vengeful. As they go for another round, Alita targets the guy hitting her, tackling him to the ground, and then scores. Afterwards, Hugo gives her a ride home, and hearing she has no memory of anything, he offers her chocolate, which she remarks is her new favorite food. Hugo spots a bounty hunter, and explains he is scanning for his mark, and that he uses swords since guns are outlawed, punishable by death. As she comes home, Alita asks Ido about his injury on the arm, but he won't answer. Next day, Hugo takes her out again, showing her his favorite view of Salem, remarking he dreams of going up there, saying that if you know the right people, you can. He remarks the funny thing is she is from up there, since everything from the scrapyard is dumped from Salem, so she must be from up there. She remarks she can't remember it though. That night, she sees Ido go out again, and starts following him. She sees he's following a woman around, and gets worried. Seeing he's about to attack the woman, Alita tries to stop him, but the woman disappears. Ido remarks it's a trap, and then two figures appear that remark they've finally got him, calling Ido not by his name, but Hunter Warrior. Ido tries to defend him and Alita from them, but is cut and knocked to the ground. The woman reappears, saying she would like to get his nice eyes. Ido tells Alita to run, but instead of escaping, she runs up and kills the guy Ido fought. They're all surprised, and the woman starts attacking her. Alita tries to avoid her blades, and Ido is stopped when he tries to go help her. Suddenly, Alita kicks the assassin, stops its incoming attack, and crushes its head. The big cyborg gets angry, drops Ido and calls Alita a little flea, and they two begin fighting. Alita jumps up at a building, and as she makes an attack, she gets a flashback. Suddenly she remembers a huge battle on the moon, and some woman calling her 99. She kicks the big cyborg's arm off, and fetches Ido's weapon. The cyborg remarks he'll be coming back for them both. Afterwards, Alita tells Ido about her memory, and Ido explains there's no police anymore, so the factory pays people like him to do all the dirty work and keep some sort of order. As Ido has collected his bounty of 20,000 credits, the two go home, all while Ido explains that he had a daughter once who he tried to build working legs for. However, One day a guy broke into his clinic to steal drugs, and as he tried to escape the building, his daughter couldn't get away from his path fast enough, and was knocked dead. That is why he begun hunting. At home, Ido reveals he found she's got a normal teenage brain, but that her heart, her cyber core, is made up of lost technology that nobody's seen since the Great War, which could power the whole of Iron City for years, remarking she's over 300 years old. Somewhere else, a man called Vector tells Chiron she promised him champions, and tells her to be ready for tomorrow's game. Suddenly, the big cyborg appears, whose name is Gruishka, telling Chiron he needs her help to rebuild him, and remarks that cybergirl of Ido's did all of this to him. She asks him surprised to repeat what he just said. Alita starts remembering fighting techniques that she once learned. A day later, Ido remarks there's no bounty on Gruishka, that someone high up is protecting him. Alita remarks she wants to be a hunter-warrior like him, but Ido tells her he doesn't want her to do awful stuff and get her hands dirty too. Alita gets disheartened, saying she'll find out things for herself then. Somewhere else, Chiron is rebuilding Gruishka as Vector comes in. Suddenly someone called Nova hacks into Gruishka's system, talking through him, and tells Vector and Chiron that if they like their comfortable lives, they should send Gruishka to kill Alita and bring her to him. Suddenly, Nova instead hacks into a chip in Vector's head, and now talk through him, telling Chiron that if she succeeds, he'll make sure she gets to come up to Salem, and she gladly accepts. Alita has met up with Hugo to learn more about Motorball, and they walk in to watch a game. Hugo explains that the one who wins the top game called Final Champion, and remains unbeaten, gets picked to go to Salem, which is the finest prize anyone can get. Alita sees Chiron, and Hugo explains Vector practically owns Motorball, and that Chiron is his assistant. A while later, as one of the players when using a shredding arm weapon, Chiron tells Vector she could use that for their other project. Suddenly, Hugo's friends come running, saying they've got a new assignment. Next, as the champion comes out of a bar, he's attacked by guys on motorcycles. He's tased, and then dragged into a truck, and driven away. They begin cutting off his arm, and a while later, they meet up with Vector in a dark alley, and Hugo removes his face cover. Vector pays them good credits for the arm, and when Hugo and company has driven away, Vector picks up a torch to kill the champion with. Next day, Hugo and his two friends bring Alita with them to go on a trip outside the city. They hike to a ship in the middle of the forest, and they explain it's from the war, but that no one has touched it since it's unknown technology. Alita exclaims they need to go to the command deck and jumps in. She goes into the ship, and as she reaches the command deck, she enters a room with a large energy orb in it. Somehow she remembers how to disable it, and in it is a high-tech cyborg body, which she brings back out. Back in Ido's clinic, Ido says he won't connect her to it. She gets angry, asking why an enemy ship responded to her, remarking he must have known she was a warrior. Ido starts explaining it's called a Berserker, which is a highly advanced humanoid weapons system created by the United Republics of Mars, remarking he will never unite her with this body. She says it's fine and leaves. Next, she goes to register as a hunter-warrior, and when she comes out, Hugo tells her Ido will be pissed. The two go to a place full of bounty hunters, and Hugo hesitates to go in. Once inside, a bounty hunter called Zapan laughs at her for becoming a hunter-warrior, introducing her to some bounty hunters having over 200 confirmed kills, including the Dogmaster with his hellhounds. He introduces himself, and explains he's the keeper of the Damascus Blade, a lost technology. Alita explains she came to ask for help, to bring down Gruishka, who is now somehow protected by the system. They begin to laugh, and tell her they won't help. Zapan starts acting superior, saying he might pull her cute cyborg parts off to sell them, and Alita warns him he might mess up his pretty hair, and people in the saloon laugh. Zapan attacks, and she responds. He takes up his sword, and she easily takes it from him, kicking him across the room, and silencing everybody in there. She says she'll take on anybody in the room, and if she wins, they'll fight beside her. A big fight breaks out, and Alita kicks down one after the other. Suddenly, Ido comes running, and enters the place. He yells so everybody hears that if they don't stop, he'll no longer give free repairs, and all stop immediately. As Ido says they need to talk, Gruishka appears, having gotten an upgrade. He says he's there for the girl, and Zapan says she's all his. The rest remark there's no bounty on Gruishka, and so they won't help. Suddenly, the little dog runs up to protect Alita, and Gruishka kills it, making Dogmaster angry. Alita paints her face with the blood, after which Gruishka starts attacking. She manages to avoid his attacks, and so he digs a hole in the floor, telling her to come and fight in his world. She follows him down, and the two start having an epic battle down below. Gruishka uses his shredding arm to make his attacks. Alita tries to cut his arm off like before, but is unable to. Gruishka laughs and continues attacking her, but fails to hit her. Gruishka explains he was remade by the one who shapes her destiny right now, his master Nova. Alita yells in anger, and jumps up at him to hit him, but then suddenly her body is split into pieces. Suddenly she remembers someone telling her she has the soul of a survivor, and that Nova is the dragon that must be slayed. Gruishka picks her up, but Alita hasn't given up, and manages to get loose, jumps up at him, and pokes his eye in. She loses her arm, and just as Gruishka in anger is about to crush her, Ido and Hugo appear, and then the Dogmaster with his hellhounds. Gruishka can't defend himself and begins running away. The Dogmaster remarks Gruishka wasn't a dog lover, which he hates. As they come back up, they meet Chirin, who tells Ido he can bring her back as many times as he likes. Next, Alita is being united with the Berserker body. As she wakes up, the body transforms to make micro-adjustments according to her unconscious image of herself, and afterwards, she thanks Ido a lot for trusting her and making her whole. Vector appears, but overtaken by Nova, speaking though him, telling Gruishka that he can't fail him again, saying he needs Alita's heart. As Nova has disappeared, Vector remarks he can't have Gruishka determine his own fate. Next, he's invited Hugo, asking him about Alita. A day or two later, Alita has appeared in Hugo's window. She asks if something happened to him, and he explains Vector invited him and that alcohol was involved. They begin talking about Hugo's dream of going up to Salem, and Alita suddenly gets an idea, telling him he can sell her heart, probably for millions, with which they most probably can use to get up there. Hugo tells her she shouldn't just do things for people, telling her to put it back. They remark that was intense. Hugo explains however that Vector wants her to try out for Motorball, and Hugo says it's a much better way to get to Salem, since she would kick ass and probably become a champion. Next up, Ido has made Motorball parts for her, saying if he can't change her mind, he'll at least help her. In another room, Vector tells Motorball players and bounty hunters this night is not a game, but a hunt, and will give 500,000 to the one who kills Alita. Somewhere else, Hugo tells his friends he's out for good, making his friend upset, and they begin fighting. Suddenly Zapan appears laughing, saying he wants Hugo's head to be able to trap that girlfriend of his. His friend tries to help, but Zapan easily kills him, and Hugo takes the chance to run away. He is skilled, and climbs up on a house to escape Zapan. Meanwhile, Alita joins the line at Motorball. Suddenly, Ido remarks those are not ordinary players, running to try and warn Alita. Not hearing him, he calls her, telling her it's a setup, that they are all there to kill her. The game begins, and Alita immediately manages to take the ball. Somewhere high above, Vector remarks Hugo brought Alita right to them, saying he's sending Hugo right to Salem as his reward. Alita begins executing countermeasures to prevent the others from getting a chance to strike her. One after the other, she takes the others out. Some of them are close to taking her out, but she manages to get out of all the trouble she ends up in. Suddenly Hugo contacts her, telling her Zapan killed his friend, and now he's out to kill him, telling her he's trying to get to the old church. She stops, and tells him she's coming, jumping out of the arena. The bounty hunters continue to follow her, and one of them falls off. The others however manage to catch her, and as they're about to kill her, Alita makes her escape, causing one of them to be killed by the other, after which Alita catches the other in chains, and lets a machine crush him. Hugo reaches the church, but then Zapan appears, and at the very last moment, Alita appears, saving him. Suddenly she sees there's a bounty on Hugo, and she feels betrayed. Hugo explains he never killed anyone, he just stripped people for parts. Zapan tells her to step aside, saying she's violating the law by interfering a hunter-warrior with his kill. She says Hugo is her kill, and Zapan tells her to do it then. Not doing it though, Zapan stabs Hugo, just as Centurions appear, and Alita brings Hugo into the church. Zapan yells she better finish him before they do, and she asks Hugo what he did. Hugo promises he didn't kill any of those guys, only stripped them for parts. Chirin sees it all, and when getting a call from Vector asking if she found them, she lies and tells him she didn't. Chirin walks out, and Alita asks for help. Chirin replies she has an idea. Next, Alita walks out of the church, claiming the bounty of Hugo, and one of the Centurions announces the kill is confirmed. Zapan sees through her, and sees Hugo is hooked up to her system. A Centurion announced Zapan is violating the law for trying to steal Alita's bounty, and Alita takes his Damascus blade and slices his face off, making him start screaming, and she leaves. Next, Ido says Hugo will stay alive, saying Chirin's surgical techniques were brilliant, and that there's no brain damage. Ido later explains the only way to get to Salem is to become final champion, remarking there's no way to buy your way there. Alita asks how he knows that for sure, and Ido reveals he was born in Salem. Because of his daughter's illness, he and Chiron were forced out of Salem, and he removed the mark of Salem from his forehead. Alita tells Hugo and the others there's something she has to do. Somewhere else, Chiron tells Vector she's finished working for him, saying she doesn't want to go to Salem, and walks out on him. But then Gruishka appears. Alita enters the factory, yelling Vector's name, and Centurions detect hostile intentions. She begins attacking them, and one after the other, she destroys all the Centurions. Vector asks security if they got her, but after getting no answer, Alita suddenly appears. She asks if he ever was going to send Hugo to Salem, and Vector explains he always keeps his promises, showing how he's about to send Chiron up there. Having distracted her, Gruishka attacks her. Suddenly, she gets a flashback of the war, how they are trying to get up to Salem, and how some defense mechanism they destroy cuts of a large pipeline. She then hears her team leader telling her she must finish the mission to destroy Salem. Alita rises, all while her wound starts healing, and she tells Gruishka that their real enemy is watching them right now, and that he's being used. Gruishka doesn't listen and attacks, and Alita stops him once and for all. She yells she wants to talk to Nova, and suddenly Nova takes over Vector's body. She asks where he is, and he says he's at home in Salem. Nova threatens Alita to kill Ido and Hugo and all others she loves, remarking the only way to enjoy immortality is to watch others die, and Alita stabs him. Nova remarks Vector was getting tiring anyway, telling her they'll meet soon. Suddenly Ido calls, telling her Centurions came to get Hugo, and that Hugo is trying to escape up to Salem. Next, Alita has caught up with him, telling him they need to go back, that Nova is using him to get to her. Hugo says he'll die if he goes back down, that they belong up there. Alita says they belong nowhere except together, and Hugo says okay. Somewhere, Nova has heard and seen it all, and initiates Salem defenses. Suddenly, Alita sees it coming, but as Hugo tries to jump over it, he's cut to pieces. Sliding down, Alita jumps after him and catches him. She says she'll lift him up, but then his arm fails him. He thanks her for saving his life, and as she replies she loves him, he falls down. Many days, weeks, and months pass, and Alita is working hard at rising in ranks in the motorball game. Preparing for the Champions League's game, a sports commentator announces that today Alita will have a chance at becoming final champion and go to Salem, all while people repeatedly yell her name. And far above, Nova is watching it all. The end. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this, and hit the like button to help us out. Until next time, take care.